Hello there. Welcome in Friday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the 100% free Extra Sports 1300 app, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the next couple of hours as I need to make my way from point A to point B, point A being the studio, point B to Widener Field for the Switchbacks match tonight against Las Vegas Lights FC. You can hear that on all the same platforms you're currently listening to this show on. Roland Vargas and myself hit the airwaves at 6:30. Kickoff is at 7. So, in the meantime, got some thoughts on this Friday, I should say, or just on Friday in general. How do you feel about it as a day? Top 5 day, top 3 day of the week? 719-247-1313. That is the text and the phone line for your convenience. The opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics are going on as we speak. They will be seen live on NBC later tonight. But interesting. I don't want to, spoilers. So many people just watch the primetime coverage of the Olympics, so I don't want to be, too much of a spoiler. But I will be from time to time. Interesting, they do the Olympic torch handoff. And Rafael Nadal is carrying the torch for part of the distance. He's Spanish. But yet they let him do it because he made a name for himself at Roland Garros in France. Kind of an interesting selections there. So that's the only thing. There's a lot. This thing has been going for like 3 hours. So that one little tiny bit, and he's not even the guy that's lighting the cauldron. So, or gal. The cauldron hasn't been lit yet, so I don't even know who's doing that. So opening ceremonies tonight, that means we are sans events today. Things get going in earnest tomorrow. I'll give you kind of a schedule, what to watch out for over the weekend. And I want to start with the Olympics. Because you have probably heard by now the Canadian soccer team, the Canadian women's soccer team, getting busted for using a drone to videotape New Zealand's practice the other day. Well, it turns out that was merely the tip of the iceberg. This thing is Spygate Canadian style. TSN with a bombshell report that Canada, based on some sources, has been spying all the way back to last Olympics where Canada won a gold medal. And this has been going on routinely and regularly, men's, women's. The scope of this thing. It's like Spygate, and we think of Connor Stallions. There's a little bit of that in there as well, because they were spying in Canada when they were hosting teams. They would go and find the places where they could hide and do this in other countries. The thing with Connor Stallions, as opposed to the Patriots Spygate scandal, was that it was, they're sending Stallions all over the country to do advanced scouting. And you think about the miles traveled, Connor Stallions and the Patriots have nothing on Canadian soccer. So already their coach had to bow out of their first matchup. Now it's like, how much more punishment is going to come down on Canada here? And I was a proponent during the Michigan scandal that punish Jim Harbaugh. Do whatever you need to do on Jim Harbaugh, but let Michigan play. If they earn their way into the college football playoff, let them go in. You punish Jim Harbaugh to the extent that you see fit if you're the Big Ten. And I think the same thing here. Now, every Canadian coach, every staffer that you can gather credible intel on, nail them to the wall. But I don't want to see Canada out of the Olympics. Let them compete. They'll be vilified. They'll be booed. And it is what it is. Not saying the players deserve it, but there's some answering for the sins of their coaches and staff that has to be done here. So I think that's a fair trade-off. You become the villains of the Paris Games, but you're still allowed to compete. You could still win a gold medal. And then what the Olympic Committee decides to do moving forward in terms of sanctions to, LA in 2028, that's a whole nother thing. But I don't want to. I think Canada should be able to compete. But what's really interesting about this to me is, Spygate, it was a team that had already proved that they were the best. Spygate was a mix of paranoia and that desire to remain on top, right? But the Patriots had already proven that they were the best team in the NFL. They have been that for a while. But in their desire to remain on top, in their paranoia that their time, and I'm mostly talking about Belichick here and his coaching staff, their paranoia that one day it could all be over, and they went too far. With Michigan, it was a school that could not get past their chief rival, which meant they couldn't compete for a national title. Ohio State kept blocking them. And in their desperation to beat Ohio State, to win a national championship, they did this. Well, with Canada, we see, because they're our neighbors to the north, that over the last few years, Canada has made significant gains on American soccer. We used to be way ahead of Canada. Like, we had our issues, especially on the men's side. But still, we were far ahead of Canada. And over the last few years, Canada's jumped up and jumped up and jumped up. And now it culminates with the Copa America and the last Olympics, right? On the women's side, it's the last Olympics with Canada winning gold. With the men's soccer team, it's advancing further in Copa America than the U.S. did. And just like Michigan, because with Spygate, it was harder, I think, to make the argument that, this led to the New England Patriots, remaining on top. Like, this was the key to them. No, they still have Belichick. They still have Brady. With Michigan, it brought up legitimate questions on whether this spying program that they enlisted Connor Stallions to oversee actually led to Michigan finally vanquishing that dragon that is Ohio State. There are legitimate questions. And I have the same questions here with Canada. Like, how much did this help? Because I don't see anything out of Canada showing that they're so much more invested in soccer than we are. Heck, they have an American coach. They took one of ours, Jesse Marsh, to coach their team. So you sit here, if you're in the soccer community and if you follow international soccer and you're wondering how in the world has Canada made up so much ground? How is Canada putting a gold medal around their neck in 2021? Other than the fact that Mallory Swanson was left off the U.S. women's team. She could have helped. But how is Canada winning gold over Alex Morgan, over Megan Rapinoe, and the rest of the U.S. women's soccer team? And then how is the Canadian men's team advancing further than the U.S. is in Copa America? You know, Clint Dempsey had a line after Canada advanced out of the group stage in Copa America. He says, that could be the U.S. That could be the U.S. And he took a little bit of flack for that sentiment, but I didn't think he was wrong. You see a North American country, obviously North America is started far behind the rest of the world when it comes to soccer. The U.S. has made all these investments. We had all these seminal moments with hosting a World Cup in the 90s and winning a Women's World Cup. Like, there's no reason that what Canada has been doing the last few years, the U.S. couldn't have done. And you think about that line and you replay it in your head, not that Clint Dempsey knew anything, but it takes on a different meaning now. You're like, wait, why is Canada doing so well? And it's funny, Jesse Marsh was asked about the U.S. job. And he said, something to the effect of, if some like institutional things, some big changes aren't made, I would never consider that job. And now you wonder, was he saying the U.S. needs to institute a drone program? I know Jesse Marsh hasn't been on the job that long, but if TSN is accurate in their reporting, how did he not know about it? Right? And even then, even if this was carried out by the Canadian Soccer Federation and it was them that was orchestrating all of this, what do we always say in these situations? Ignorance is not an excuse. It's your team. You're the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. And to a degree, you have some influence over all levels of men's soccer in your country. But it has all the ingredients, all the normal ingredients that we saw from Spygate and the Connor Stallions Michigan thing. There was a line in this piece by TSN that was just, I mean, it tells you everything, right? And we hear something like this all the time out of every cheating scandal. One of the sources that alerted TSN to what was going on said, quote, most people see this as cheating, which it is. Some of our coaches just see it as a competitive advantage and justify it by saying everyone does it, which is also not true. Not everyone cheats, and neither should we. Because that's kind of the last part of this, whether it's paranoia, whether it's desperation, whatever it is, that is the impetus of wanting to cheat. At some point, as you're putting this program in place, or you're taking intel from your opponents through drones and video cameras and all this kind of stuff, you start to try and convince yourself that what you're doing is done by everyone. And yet you notice that we didn't hear about widespread cheating in football or widespread cheating in college football. Right? We heard about, well, we try to steal signs and stuff. That's a little bit different, right? The thing about Michigan was the links that they went to. Right? The two keys. The links you go to, as in, sending Connor Stallions all over the country to do this kind of intel gathering for you, and then the use of technology. It's one thing to have a guy on the sideline that is trying to decipher that code with like random celebrity pictures and emojis and things like that. That's one thing. But to use surveillance equipment to videotape things, that's where the line is. And Michigan crossed that. New England crossed that. This is not some guy walking by the soccer stadium, like trying to get a peek at what New Zealand is doing. They're getting a drone that costs thousands of dollars and flying it overhead. This is not gamesmanship. This is not trying to gain a competitive advantage. This is cheating. And it is going to be a storyline throughout this entire Olympic Games until Canada has been eliminated. And then what happens after that? Well, that's the Olympic Committee and the world of soccer. It was just the tip of the iceberg, what Canada was doing, which, you know what, honestly, I'm not surprised, right? Do you really, take the alternative? What is more believable? That Canada, when they arrived in Paris, said to themselves, we got to retain our gold medal by any means necessary, and we're worried about New Zealand. Send a drone. Let's go buy a drone. Let's put a camera on it, and let's fly it over their practice. Because we can't lose to New Zealand, and we can't afford to not repeat as Olympic champions. Is that the more believable scenario? Or they've been doing this for years, and they just happen to now get caught in this one particular instance? You never want to make that leap until it's necessary, because you don't want to accuse people of cheating. But then you get some of the more facts and you're like, oh, of course. Of course they've been doing this. It ain't just on a whim decide to spy on New Zealand. So the coach's gone. And we'll see if any further action is taken against the Canadian women's soccer team. But as last I checked, they are going to be able to play, which I think they should. 719-247-1313. We can't go a year, can we, without having some sort of cheating scandal, can we? Just getting going on this Friday edition of the show. Coming up next, the next quarterback has been paid in the NFL. I'll give you a multiple choice question. Is it A, Dak Prescott, B, Tua, or C, Brock Purdy? I'll give you the answer after this. If you would have said that there would be a country that would take part in a massive cheating scandal at the Olympics, I got to tell you, Canada would probably be pretty far down on the list. Pretty far down the list. Now, there are countries that are probably competing that I wouldn't be able to think of right off the top of my head. But of the countries that I absolutely can name off the top of my head and know are competing in the Olympics, Canada would maybe be the last one. As sad as it might be to say, I would fully expect it to be America before Canada. But nope, we're all good. It's Canada. Going all the way back to the Olympics where they won the gold medal. That's a big deal. And that's the thing about Celine Dion's belting it out in the opening ceremonies. That's the thing, that there's so much going on at the Olympics. It moves so fast that I don't know. It's going to be around as a storyline, but there's so much other stuff going on. And tomorrow the competition really gets going. I don't know if anybody will have time to really dig into it or talk to the Canadian team, or we'll see. But did not think it would be Canada. Shame. So the latest quarterback to get paid in the National Football League is Tua Tagovailoa, who today agreed to a 4-year, $212.4 million extension with the Miami Dolphins. But that first number is what makes this interesting. Because this is not your typical, Burrow signed and then Lawrence went over him and then the next guy's over that guy and so on and so forth. Tua didn't jump anybody. I mean, he jumped some guys, but he's not at the top. He's not the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. 4 years, $212.4 million. 4. Most of these quarterbacks get 5-year contracts. So on an average annual basis, Tua could be the highest paid quarterback in theory, but he's not going to be for a total because he's only getting 4 years. He's getting the 8th most guaranteed money. He is taking up the 11th biggest chunk of the salary cap. So Tua is not under really any metric the highest paid quarterback now in the NFL. And just me saying that means it is a massive win for the Miami Dolphins. If you don't make if you can avoid making your quarterback the highest paid quarterback in the league, that is a victory. And we could talk about whether Tua deserves it or not, but that's not what this is about. Right? How many of these quarterbacks that get these massive extensions do you go worth every penny? People thought that Patrick Mahomes wasn't worth his extension. So I don't even want to get into whether Tua deserves to be the most highest. Of course he doesn't. Of course he's not the best quarterback in the league. But yet Trevor Lawrence gets paid more than Joe Burrow. Jordan Love is going to get paid more than Tua, and so on and so forth. The highest paid quarterback in the NFL is not an indication of who the best quarterback is. We know this. So actually, for once, a quarterback is getting paid commensurate to what level of quarterback he is. Tua is not upper echelon. 8th most guaranteed money. Okay. Is he somewhere close to the 8th best quarterback in the league? Somewhere in that vicinity. I'd probably say the 11th, as in 11th highest percentage of his team's cap space. Even though this is still stupid money, it's actually quite a reasonable contract. So now the Miami Dolphins, and from what I have read from these cap websites like Spot Track, as they dig into the nuts and bolts of these contracts, most of the guarantees are in the first 3 years. So this is essentially a 3-year contract, a 3-year agreement. This is the Miami Dolphins saying, Tua, we are comfortable with you as our starting quarterback for the next 3 years. But if we are going to pay up again at the end of that, we got to see some things. And we got to do some things as an organization. And it's quite obvious what those are. You look at Tua's numbers, the accuracy, the yards, the touchdowns. There's not a lot to pick apart. I would say that in many ways, Tua Tagovailoa is the Dak Prescott of the AFC. And I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment, but I don't mean it as a huge diss. And Tua has time to be able to distance himself from that comparison. But what are your concerns with Dak? Playoffs, but just any big game. Right? Dak Prescott bludgeons the Commanders. He bludgeons the Giants. That's where he makes his hay. That's how the Dallas Cowboys consistently win 10, 11, 12 games. It's the lesser teams that they beat up on. Well, that was Miami last year. 1-3 against playoff teams last year. And their one win was coincidentally against Dallas in the battle of teams that can't beat good teams. They lost by 28 in Buffalo. Now getting back to Miami. They lost by 28 in Buffalo. And then they lost at home late in the season with the AFC East divisional crown in their grasp. They got destroyed by Baltimore. The playoff game against Kansas City was not competitive. That's what Miami wants to see. They want to see that Tua can win them a big game. And I would join in with the Miami Dolphins in that sentiment. I like Tua Tagovailoa. But this year, and where he can separate himself from being the Dak Prescott of the AFC, is that he's younger. Right? This Tua has only been a thing for a little while. So I think if you're a Dolphins fan, you do have optimism that Tua can grow into that. But you do like the fact that your team said, we'll give you 3 years. Now, why would Tua agree to this? He's betting on himself. Because if this works, right, first of all, he's getting 3 years. or for a 4-year contract, but the bulk of the $212.5 million is going to be paid out in guarantees over the first 3 years. Okay, so basically this is a 3-year bet. If Tua passes this with flying colors and Miami competes for a Super Bowl, or they win the division, or whatever benchmark they have to hit, then he's going to get an even more lucrative deal when he's still in his prime and not even at the tail end of his prime. He would be younger than 30 when the Dolphins would have to extend him again. So it's risky. It absolutely is risky. The risk right now is on Tua's side. But the risk 3 years from now is on the Miami side. Because if Tua gets them to where they want to go, then we will, in 3 years, be talking about Tua Tagovailoa being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. But at that point, when Miami, like so many of these other teams, happily pay, this is my favorite quarterback contract that has been signed since I knew that Patrick Mahomes would remain a Kansas City Chief. This is great. I think this is a perfect compromise. It takes care of Tua. It doesn't put you into the quarterback wasteland, right? You're going to have him for the next 3 years. But you motivate him. You still give him something to chase. And it does send a signal that we like you, but it's time to go. We have loftier expectations than getting bounced in a wild card game. 1-3 in the regular season, plus a loss to Kansas City in the playoffs against playoff teams. This year, the Miami Dolphins have 7 games against playoff teams. 7. They had 4 last year. They have 7 on this schedule, and the New York Jets are going to be better than they were last year because Aaron Rodgers is, knock on wood, healthy for the entirety of the campaign. So Tua got his money, but this is a big year for Tua. A big year. And a big year for Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins as a whole. Right? They play like the San Francisco 49ers of the AFC. They're building their team like the 49ers. But at this point, the Miami Dolphins should not be mentioned in the same breath as San Francisco. They're trying to do the same thing. They're not there yet. And this year will go a long way to seeing if they can, if McDaniel can replicate what Kyle has in San Francisco. So Tua Tagovailoa, 4 years, $212.4 million. So now that leaves Jordan Love, who's holding in, and Dak Prescott, whose contract is set to expire after this season. But you heard Jerry Jones yesterday. Dak's not getting an extension until after the season, if even then. Jordan Love will be the next quarterback that will get extended before the season begins. 719-247-1313. Come back and close out hour number 1 on Drive Time Sports after this. 719-247-1313. That is the phone and text line if you'd like to interact. Tua Tagovailoa becomes the new rich quarterback in the league, although it is not a record-setting deal, at least compared to Lawrence and Burrow and some of these other recent ones. It's only a 4-year deal. And for that reason, love it. And I think it's reflective of where the Miami Dolphins and Tua are right now. You like what you see, but you need to see it in more meaningful football game. Steve G says, as it should be, still has to take that major step, and that means a trophy. Now, I wouldn't set the bar for Miami there right this second. Do they need to win a Super Bowl within the next 3 years? Is Andy Reid and Travis Kelce retiring within the next 3 years? I will say for this season, this upcoming year, the non-negotiables. Isn't that what Rich Eisen is doing? Or I heard somebody doing non-negotiables for other teams. To me, the Miami Dolphins have to do 2 things at minimum this year. They got to win the division. They got to win a playoff game. Okay, I know the Jets have Aaron Rodgers back. Bully for them. They're a circus. Okay, Patriots are awful, and the Bills are worse. They're worse. Just across the board, the Buffalo Bills are a worse football team than they were last year. That division came down to the wire last year. There's no reason Miami should not beat Buffalo. And a mere split with the Bills would have won Miami the division. I think Miami has to win the division. And I do think they have to win a playoff game. I mean, they're not better than Kansas City or Baltimore or Cincinnati. Why can't they be the next team up after that? I don't think there's any reason why Miami couldn't be. But they got to do it. Uh, 719-247-1313. Speaking of quarterbacks. So yesterday talked about the Raiders bringing the Kermit the Frog puppet and dressing him up like Patrick Mahomes. Well, apparently they also called him the B word, which I will say that is probably, doing that on social media for people to see. That's crossing a line. I did not have as big of a problem with the Raiders doing what they did, other than don't call another grown man a B word. Like, don't do that. But I thought, old Raiders are back. They push the envelope a little bit. You don't like them, but they're trying to in a like humanize Patrick Mahomes, right? Knock him down a few pegs in your mind, right? That psychological aspect of it to go against Patrick Mahomes twice a year. And the idea that if you can consistently beat him, you can beat anybody in the NFL. But Antonio Pierce says that they had a meeting about it. He didn't like any of it. I'm sorry, didn't you just say a few months ago that you were instituting Mahomes rules? And the Kermit the Frog puppet is too far for you? You know what the Pistons did to Michael Jordan, right? You know by today's standards that would be against the rules. But the Kermit the Frog puppet, that's not what we're about with the Raiders. Like, dude, lean into it. Lean into it. Again, don't call the guy that word. But the Kermit the Frog thing, if I'm a Raiders fan, I would love that. I would love it. Here's the problem, though. And I acknowledge this right away. Yeah, you're going to piss off Patrick Mahomes. So when he says something like this, I'm not surprised. Oh, no, they made Patrick Mahomes angry. Well, yeah, what do you think they were going to do? And I get it. As a Chiefs fan, I thank the Raiders because it was getting to the point where if you are a Chiefs fan, the regular season does not matter to you. It is press fast forward. Let's get to the postseason. That's when the real football. No reason, no game in September or October and even borderline November or December is going to make any Chiefs fan feel like they can't win the Super Bowl unless an injury occurs. All the more reason to fast forward through the regular season. Okay, that's where Chiefs fans are at. And now here are the Raiders. It could not be a more perfect team to do this. Mocks and makes fun of and attacks number 15. This is awesome. All of a sudden, Raiders Chiefs is must watch. I love it. But that's the risk that you run. But isn't that the whole point? From the Raiders' perspective, the Mahomes rules and this Kermit the Frog of it, isn't that the point of this? That the Raiders are mentally conditioning themselves to not care? To not be afraid of Patrick Mahomes, and everyone's like, oh no, you poked the bear. Yeah, they're trying to. They're trying to. And yeah, we're going to probably see that Patrick Mahomes is going to light up the Raiders because they're just not that good of a football team to begin with. And now he's a little bit more motivated. Andy Reid is the best play caller in the NFL. They'll probably be doing some weird thing where Travis Kelce is like spinning on his head or something like that and then gets up and catches a touchdown pass. Who knows what Andy Reid is going to do? Like, yeah, that's all going to happen. But a Chiefs game during the regular season matters. There's some juice to it. And the Raiders, for once, are not acting like pathetic weaklings and cellar dwellers, which they have been for years. They're bordering on irrelevance. There are more fans for the opposing team in their stadium on a weekly basis than are Raiders fans. They have lost their identity since moving out to Las Vegas. They need this. They need to poke the bear. They need to throw stones. They need to mock. All around, this is good. If you're a Raiders fan, this is good. If you're a Chiefs fan, this is good. If you're Mahomes and Andy Reid, and if you're Antonio Pierce, this is good. The Raiders-Chiefs rivalry is back, ladies and gentlemen, and the NFL is better for it. And yes, Mahomes is going to eviscerate them. But you think that they were going to get by without? You think that was going to have no chance of happening? 719-24-7-1313. Did the Raiders mess up in mocking Patrick Mahomes? Take your thumbs on that. Coming up next, we head to Broncos camp. And a little game I'd like to start. It's a spinoff of the Newlywed Game. And our first two contestants are Sean Payton and Garrett Bowles. We'll explain further next. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on a Friday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Reminder, you can watch the show on a daily basis. Granted that you follow us on some social media platform. Hopefully you're doing that on all platforms that you are on, but you can watch the show live each and every day. Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube by simply adding Extra Sports 1300. Broncos wrapped up I won't say the first week of training camp because this was an abbreviated week, but they are ending this week of training camp. Fans were allowed out, and we've seen this in the political arena. You can manipulate when you take your pictures and your video, you can manipulate and make a crowd look bigger or smaller. It did seem, talking to some people and seeing some things on social media, it did seem like the crowd was bigger than it had been recently and more energized. Now, where I would like to compare it is 2 years ago when Russell Wilson came in, because I doubt that today's training camp crowd would have been as hype as that training camp crowd was. But certainly I would imagine that there are a few Broncos fans who decided, yeah, I'm going to go to the training camp and did not go last year based on intrigue and excitement around the football team. And when I say intrigue and excitement around the football team, let's just be real with each other here. Excitement and intrigue around number 10. But this is the first round quarterback the Broncos have had since Paxton Lynch. It's their highest drafted quarterback in, gosh, how long? So it's the excitement, whatever excitement was up there at Dove Valley. However many more fans were up there than were there to start last year's training camp, it's because of Bo Nix. But they sounded loud, engaged. Players remarked today how great it was to have the fans out there, and Sean Payton talked about how it adds a little bit of competitive fire, gets the competitive juices flowing to see the fans out there. So that's always good to see. A lot of talk over the last few days about contracts, extensions, amendments, restructures. Well, it just so happens that Garrett Bowles spoke today, and he's the guy that if you're going in terms of whose contract is up next, Garrett Bowles will be the next guy to get paid. But yet Quinn Meinerz is the one that receives the extension despite Garrett Bowles being a longer tenured Bronco, playing a more important position on the line. So does Garrett Bowles not want to be in Denver anymore? That's not the case, he says.
I love this city. I love this organization. I want to play my whole career here. The front office knows that. They know I want to be a Bronco for life. And so, my family's here, established here. We love it here. We don't want to go anywhere else. So my job is just to play good football. And, the ball's in, the organization, the ball's in their court. So I just got to do my job and the rest will take care of itself.
So we could cross that off the list. Garrett Bowles does not want out of Denver. So Sean Payton, what is he looking for? That's what I've been wondering. What does Sean Payton want from Garrett Bowles? Because the improvement he has made, he is a long way from the holding call machine that he was to begin his career. Garrett Bowles has made tremendous improvements. He is a starting left tackle in the National Football League. But I've wondered if he brings to the table what Sean Payton wants him to bring to the table. So who better to ask than Sean Payton on what Garrett Bowles needs to improve on?
I'd say if there's one area that he's working on daily with Zach is landmarks in the run game. You know, he's very natural at pass protection, getting to the right hat placements in the run game, whether he's play side or on the backside. I think some of those things are areas that he's worked quite a bit on.
So the run game, just another nod to what I said yesterday about the most improvement needing to come from the running game with this Broncos offense. If they're going to move the ball more effectively, put up more points, they got to run the ball better. And we've seen Garrett Bowles give Russell Wilson all the time that he needs. All the time that he should need. And Russell Wilson's like, I'll grab about 5 more seconds. Thank you. Garrett Bowles has got to essentially become a better run blocker. This is going to be a team, especially as Bo Nix is developing and getting his legs underneath him and all those things that you need a rookie to do. They're going to want to run the football. And there is Sean Payton telling you what he needs to see from Garrett Bowles. Perhaps to go to George Payton and say, let's give this guy a contract extension. Although, there is something to be said for the way Garrett Bowles plays in a contract year. 2020 was the renaissance of Garrett Bowles, right? Worked with Mike Munchak. The holding calls were down to next to nothing. That motivational tactic worked. And he had his best season as a pro. And that year in 2020 is not lost on Garrett Bowles, and it gives him confidence that he will do what he needs to do to cash in this offseason.
I mean, it's only the second time in my career that I've had the same O-line coach and the same head coach twice. I mean, with Mike Munchak and Coach Van Giotes, and now, it's Coach Payton and Coach Treve. So, I feel very comfortable. I think I played my best ball last time I did this and the second time in my offense in 2020. So just being comfortable with it, knowing my assignments, and just getting better every day. I just got to fix some things in the run game and get comfortable with that. And then, the pass game is my cup of tea. So I just got to switch those roles and just, focus on that and do what the coaches asked me to do and, have one of my best seasons ever.
You notice that at the end, talked about the run game. Sean Payton, what does Garrett Bowles need to work on? The run game. Garrett Bowles mentions that there are just some things in the run game he needs to work at. That's not the only time that it seemed like Sean Payton and Garrett Bowles had the exact same mindset when it comes to Garrett Bowles. I brought this up when it comes to Pat Surtain, but it applies to everybody throughout this Broncos roster. What Sean Payton is doing right now, as he continues to evaluate this roster, going into an offseason where he will be flush with cash and be able to bring in veterans, or what veterans on this team that are worth keeping around for the long term? Are they going to still be at the height of their powers when the Broncos are ready to win again? And Garrett Bowles, he was one of the older draft picks in his class. He's now going into potentially his third contract. Right? Time goes fast. But both Sean Payton and Garrett Bowles believe that there's still plenty of good football left in Garrett Bowles.
He's a tremendous athlete. Like he's extremely athletic, and and you don't feel 8 years. Sometimes you feel that when you work with a player. Other times you don't, and I don't feel that with him.
And then here's Garrett Bowles basically saying the exact same thing that Sean Payton said.
I think the thing that's going for me is I haven't played football for that long. I didn't play that much in college. My body's fresh. I feel like I'm 25, to be honest with you, maybe even 22. Sometimes probably a little bit younger. But I feel great. My body feels great. My mind feels great. I'm humbled to get better every single year. I feel like that's what I've been doing.
So it does seem like Sean Payton and Garrett Bowles are on the same page. There's no communication barrier between the two of them. Sean Payton has told Garrett Bowles what he needs from him, what he likes about him, what he doesn't like about him, and Garrett Bowles seems to be taking all of that to heart. So if Garrett Bowles is going to get his extension, then maybe it's better to watch Garrett Bowles when the Broncos run the football than throw it. Because that's the question that Sean Payton has about him. And what Garrett Bowles knows he needs to work on. Of course, you remember the comments from Garrett Bowles. Sounded a little Nathan McKinnon-esque, where he kept talking about, the number of years he's been in the league and the Broncos keep losing. And now here we are asking Garrett Bowles again about a combination of quarterbacks that are supposedly competing for the starting job. Here's what Bowles says about the trio.
They all can play. Or they want to be here. And that's how Coach Payton rolls. Is he's not going to bring somebody in here that doesn't think that he can play and to run his scheme and to run his offense. He's had one great quarterback in Drew Brees, and he has a certain way of doing things, and he knows that all three of these quarterbacks can be special for us with Stiddy and Zach and Bo and all those guys I love dearly, and it's just my job to keep their jersey fresh. It doesn't matter who's back there. As a left tackle, you gotta sustain that left side and protect their blind side so that they can feel comfortable back there to deliver the ball to our playmakers.
Something that Garrett Bowles touched on in there, which I think brings us back to what I started the segment talking about, the number of fans that were out at Dove Valley. Certainly you could expect them to be more excitable and be more numerous than they were at this point 1 year ago. I'm sure all of them aren't head over heels in love with Bo Nix. I'm sure there are a fair amount of Broncos fans that thought it was a reach to take him where they did. And I'm sure that opinion may be held by various members of the Denver Broncos. Who knows? It could be Garrett Bowles. But what everyone keeps coming back to is Sean Payton. With Nathaniel Hackett, with Vic Fangio, with Vance Joseph, was there a feeling out of the three guys prior to Sean Payton that they would make the right decision? Was there confidence that whether it's drafting a quarterback or playing a young quarterback or bringing in a veteran, was there any faith in Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio, and Nathaniel Hackett that they were going to make the right call when it came to quarterback? I guess Nathaniel Hackett's job was easy because Russell Wilson was handed to him. But how about Vic Fangio and Vance Joseph? They both had quarterback competitions. They had to name a starter. Did you feel like they would choose correctly? It truly is in Sean we trust with the Denver Broncos. Garrett Bowles may feel some kind of way about taking Bo Nix. Some fans may feel some kind of way about the Broncos taking Bo Nix. But everything keeps coming back to Sean Payton knows what he's doing. Sean Payton's done this before. If Sean says these guys out of this group will give us the guy that can lead us into Seattle and win, we believe that. And I have heard enough of Garrett Bowles. I've heard enough of the fan base. I've heard enough from Cortland Sutton and many other Broncos over the years. I'm telling you, there weren't as many votes of confidence in. We know Vance Joseph's going to make the right call. We know Vic Fangio is going to make the right call. We know Nathaniel Hackett knows best. There wasn't nearly that feeling around this team. But there's that feeling now. Sean knows what he's doing. I may feel one way about this guy, but the Broncos are confident that whoever Sean Payton picks, and it will be Bo Nix, that gives them the best chance to win this season. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Garrett Bowles, the Broncos, training camp opening up. Did you head up there? Maybe catching you as you make your way back from Denver. How was it? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, why Steve Kerr, as the U.S. men's basketball team gets ready to begin the Olympics, should take a cue from all of these teams that the U.S. has played in their pre-Olympic tune-ups. Coming up tonight, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks are taking on Las Vegas Lights. I know right now the weather outside is quite frightful, but soon it will be just delightful. And you don't really have any other place to go on this Friday night, admit it. So why not head out to Widener Field, because it will be Christmas in July as the Switchbacks take on Las Vegas Lights. 7 o'clock kickoff. The rain will be long gone if meteorologists are correct. And it will make it a nice, cool evening of soccer in downtown Colorado Springs. Just a few tickets left from what I've been told. Switchbacksfc.com is where you go to get those. I saw a picture circulating social media, and maybe you saw this as well. It was Anthony Edwards dunking on Kevin Durant in Team USA practice. And it's gone a bit viral. KD poking fun at himself. Good humor about it. Those two guys obviously like each other a lot. Anthony Edwards has been, almost looks up to Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant respects the game of Anthony Davis, and they're all on the same team, so it's all good. But I think it's emblematic of something. It's a bit metaphorical as I'm looking at it. One thing that we continue to be shown when it comes to basketball in the Olympics or basketball on the international stage, even, at the FIBA World Cup or whatever it might be. The teams that go up against the United States do not fear the United States. Okay, they're not intimidated. They don't care about the career accolades of the players they're going up against. South Sudan is the perfect example. If there's any team that they played in these pre-Olympic showcase games that should be just a bit intimidated, it would be South Sudan. And yet they weren't. And yet they outplayed the United States for the vast majority of that basketball game. They don't care that's LeBron James. They don't care that it's Steph Curry. They don't care that it's Kevin Durant. They don't care that it's Team USA. I think Steve Kerr would be wise to take a cue from all of these teams. He shouldn't care about the accomplishments of Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. This competition isn't for the personal glory of LeBron James. This isn't about the last ride for Kevin Durant or showcasing Steph Curry. Like, they're all a part of this. But it's about winning a gold medal. Make the main thing the main thing. And if Steve Kerr is doing that, there is no way on earth that the starting lineup against Serbia should include Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. Nor should it include Joel Embiid, but that's another, we'll get to that. But Embiid's in a different kind of category. I've just gotten the feeling over these games that Steve Kerr would not dare bring Steph Curry off the bench, LeBron James off the bench, and whenever KD were to get healthy, he would not dare bring him off the bench. It's not an insult to be on the bench for Team USA. It's freaking Team USA, right? This is not Klay Thompson pouting because Steve Kerr benched him for the Golden State Warriors. This is different. Okay, there's no shame in coming off the bench. Steve Kerr should be able to have that conversation with Steph and KD and LeBron and say, I get what you guys have accomplished and we appreciate it, but it is my job to put out the best 5 I can in every given situation in every game of this tournament, because our mortality flashed before our eyes against South freaking Sudan. Okay, and we did not do nearly a good enough job bouncing back against Germany. Right? It would have been one thing if they came out of the South Sudan scare and then beat Germany by 30. And then you're like, oh, they just underestimated South Sudan. They got a little bit caught. No big deal. The U.S. has to have their best 5 on the floor at all times, or the best 5 that is available to them at all times. The starting 5 of Team USA is a super team. And part of the reason why the world has caught up to the United States is because they emphasize team roles. They don't count down and bow down to stars. It's about building the best team. In the NBA this year, we had maybe an even better example of it than the previous year's NBA champion. I mean, you want to talk about an ultimate team, everyone playing their roles. That was the Boston Celtics. That should be, Team USA should be the Boston Celtics times 5 or 10. We've seen the depth of this team win the day for them time and time again. We've seen that Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo is a superior choice to Joel Embiid by himself. And by the way, they take on Serbia on Sunday. And you could watch that Serbia friendly and know that Embiid on Jokic is going to be a laugher. Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis must be on the floor to start that game against Serbia. You don't let Joel Embiid get cooked for another 10 minutes before you eventually go, well, time to bring in the guys that I know would be better against Jokic anyway, but because we recruited him from France, we can't put him on the bench. The U.S. can be had. They can be beaten. They're not invincible. They're not the dream team, and the teams in this field that are going up against are not Angola. The best thing Steve Kerr can do is do what every opponent of Team USA for the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years has done and said, we don't care what you have accomplished. We're going to give you our best shot. And we think with our best shot, we have a chance to beat you. Steve Kerr should take that and say, I don't care what LeBron or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant has accomplished in the past. Anthony Edwards is the best player on this basketball team. Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis are a dynamite duo that was kind of a nightmare for Nikola Jokic. I'm going to put the best team on the floor that I can. And the best team, the team that fits the best, the lineup that fits the best, does not include Steph, LeBron, and KD, and Joel Embiid. It just doesn't. How many more of these kind of slow starts do we have to endure before Steve Kerr realizes that this isn't going to get it done? Not saying they don't deserve to be on the team. All 4 of those guys are unequivocally one of the 12 best that Team USA could possibly bring in. This is not an insult. This is about recognizing that there is a new generation of NBA player that is taking over the league. We talked about it all this season. Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, leading the way in that. It's time to pass the torch, which is, by the way, a perfect pun. They can help, and they'll star. There will be games where we go, whoa, did you see what KD did it? Do you see the shot that Steph took? Not advocating kicking them off the team. I'm not advocating giving them no playing time. But there is clearly a better lineup emerging. There are better options, and it seems like Steve Kerr is unwilling to embrace those because of what? What LeBron, Steph, and KD have done in their NBA careers and what they went through to make sure that Joel Embiid chose Team USA over France. And it people may say, oh, they went 5-0, you know, these games didn't count, who really cares? It's not a problem until it's a problem. It's not a problem until Nikola Jokic and Serbia beat them on Sunday, or they lose in the gold medal game to France. And then it's a massive problem. Team USA against Serbia, Sunday morning, 9:15 Mountain Time. We'll see what the lineups look like for Steve Kerr. 719-247-1313. Come back with some of your texts. Also, a wider ranging look at the weekend for the Olympics. There's a lot going on as competition gets underway. A few things that you may be interested in checking out. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back. Olympics begin in earnest this weekend. That's what I'll be locked into. Few things that I'm going to be keeping my eye on if any of these tickle your fancy. U.S. men's soccer team takes on New Zealand at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Katie Ledecky, certainly along with Sha'Carri Richardson and Simone Biles, are probably the most anticipated U.S. athletes. Right? I think that would be, especially Richardson, because of the whole, you remember she was going to be in the Olympics and then she tested positive for marijuana and wasn't able to go back in the Tokyo Games. So now she's there. And Biles, and apparently Simone Biles has a new maneuver that she's going to debut at the Olympics. And then Katie Ledecky, who has 3 chances to tie or beat Jenny Thompson's all-time record for most gold medals by a U.S. female swimmer, and I believe that's a female swimmer from any country. I believe that record holds up. So Katie Ledecky will be in her first of 3 events, the 400 freestyle, that I'm sure will be featured on NBC tomorrow night. What else? There will be medals handed out in swimming, in cycling, in diving, in fencing, in judo, in rugby, although the U.S. men have no shot at a medal. They've already been taken out of medal contention. The shooting sports are giving away some medals tomorrow, and skateboarding. So if that's kind of your thing, I want to see people win medals. All of those sports will be passing out medals tomorrow in certain disciplines. What else? Jamal Murray will lead Team Canada against Giannis Antetokounmpo in Greece at 1:00. How perfect does that fit? Get U.S. men's soccer at 11. Jamal Murray versus Giannis at 1. And then that's plenty of time to watch Katie Ledecky in primetime. They're very tight-lipped on when, like if you go through NBC or something like that, they don't want to tell you because they want you to watch in primetime. So I'm not entirely sure when Katie Ledecky, I'm still digging into that, but if you just watch the primetime coverage from NBC tomorrow night, you'll see Katie Ledecky, no problem. Then Sunday's even better. U.S. women's soccer takes on Germany. That's a biggie. Germany, the 4th-ranked team in the world. That will be at 1:00. Earlier than that, U.S. men's national team in basketball will take on Nikola Jokic in Serbia at 9:15. Most of the Colorado athletes, and I know Derek White is now on the basketball team, so you have him. You have the trio of Sophia Smith, Lindsey Horan, and Mallory Swanson. I still almost say Pew every single time. They're all Coloradans that will be in action, but some of the individual sport athletes, Emma Weber of Boulder is competing on Sunday in the 100 breaststroke. She is a swimmer. And the bulk of the Colorado athletes that are in Paris will start competing on Monday, including U.S. women's volleyball taking on China at 9 a.m., You have Jordan Poulter from Aurora on that team, and Haley Washington from right here in Colorado Springs. She went to Doherty. So, more than a few things that may have the chance to catch your attention this weekend. And of course, we are enlisting the help of our friends from Westwood One to keep you updated. So if you have this radio station on, you will hear every hour an update from Westwood One, and they will let you know what's going on. And if you more prefer the viewing side of things, Scott Hansen is going to be hosting Gold Zone. I am so pumped for this. It's going to be like NFL Red Zone, except in the Olympics. For the entirety of the Olympics, all day long, Scott Hansen will be whipping you around Paris to all of these different events, and you will be able to see the best part of those events. But there's a caveat. Yeah, Peacock. Now, thankfully, many of you, I'm sure, went out and bought Peacock when the wild card game between the Chiefs and the Dolphins was on Peacock. So maybe you have it. But you also know that Peacock is going to be airing a lot of NFL games moving forward. So well, same can be said for the new media rights deal for the NBA. Gold Zone with Scott Hansen starts tomorrow as well if you have Peacock. So lot of resources to be able to follow what's going on in Paris. And then, of course, tonight is the re-air of the opening ceremonies. The thing that's probably most popular with most people and the least popular thing with me. Had it on in the background today. Just not an opening ceremonies guy. But I know a lot of people are. I'm in the minority. So that'll be tonight on Channel 5. Let's see. Well, let's take a text. Tucker going at me a little bit, which is fine. You know, Ryan, I listened to Chiefs fans cry for years because it had been 20 plus years between Super Bowl wins. Now you think they will win 10 more. Not going to happen. Just like Dallas fans, they believe they would win forever. Andy Reid couldn't win anywhere else because he didn't have the players. Those players go away. And so will he. Raiders beat the Chiefs, and please, no excuses. By the way, the Raiders did beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas. Like, that happened. But the type of winning we're talking about here is the Raiders want to win the division. The Raiders want to supplant Kansas City and their reign of terror. But they did catch the Chiefs a little bit off their game. And the Chiefs lost that game, and they used it, and that was the catalyst for them snapping out of whatever they were in, locking in, and you saw what this team was able to do when it really mattered. I know this is not going to last forever. I know the minute that Patrick Mahomes walks away, and maybe not even there, maybe it would be when Andy Reid walks away. Maybe it will only be one of the three. Maybe it's Chris Jones. Maybe that brings down the house of cards. I understand that. Trust me, you don't have to tell me that this is not going to last forever. I watched the Denver Broncos win back-to-back Super Bowls. And then I watched Broncos fans haggle over Brian Greasy and Jarius Jackson for like a decade. until they won again. And now I'm covering the Denver Broncos, talking about them on a daily basis. I know that this thing is not lasting forever. I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to catch the New England Patriots. I don't think they are. I know, but this year, from what you've seen, because it's not just about Kansas City and how good they are. Pay no attention to the fact that they were one of the youngest teams in the NFL last year, and they have a lot of young players they're going to rely on. They relied on last year that are going to be better for it. Don't even worry about that. Don't even worry about what the Chiefs are. Look at what has happened to some of these other teams. Who has gotten demonstrably better in the AFC? Right? You got the Bengals. Bengals, absolutely a legitimate threat. But we saw the Kansas City Chiefs go through Buffalo, Baltimore, and San Francisco, and all three of them basically lost their mind at one point of the game. Kyle Shanahan elected to receive. The Buffalo Bills got Kansas City in their building, everything going their way, and they couldn't beat Kansas City. And then Baltimore went away from what they do best in the second half. Part of what gives me the confidence, and I'm not sitting here proclaiming the Chiefs are going to three-peat. I haven't decided yet. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are very much a legitimate threat in the AFC. And I think there is a rising power in little old Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's these guys again with Jordan Love. But I have watched these teams that are supposed to be rivaling the Chiefs collapse on themselves trying to beat Kansas City. So am I confident in the Kansas City Chiefs? Yeah. I don't think there are more than two teams that could probably keep the Kansas City Chiefs from three-peating. But I know that once it goes away, the Chiefs may never win again. Because the Len Dawson Super Bowl means nothing to me. I'm 39 years old. That Super Bowl means nothing. I went my whole life without the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I know it could be a while. But right now, they're not done. They're not done. Last year was the year to get them. And the NFL couldn't. So, yeah, I'm confident. That doesn't mean that there aren't threats out there. You got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy it. Look at the Avalanche. Look at the Denver Nuggets. It immediately didn't happen for him. And every day that goes by, it seems less and less likely that either one of these two teams will win a championship anytime soon. Because the rest of the league is getting better. They're getting worse. By the way, the Nuggets did indeed come to terms with Russell Westbrook. So now that is finally done. Russell Westbrook is a member of the Denver Nuggets. Signed for this year, has an option for next year. Gotta enjoy it. And part of enjoying your team being on top is being a little braggy, being a little overconfident, perhaps, a little braggadocious. Because it will go away, and it will go away very quickly. And it won't come back for a very long time. Trust me, you don't have to tell a Chiefs fan that grew up in the heart of Broncos country how difficult it can be for a fan. I've seen it. That'll do it for the show today. Abbreviated edition. I got ahead to Widener Field. Hopefully the weather lets up. kind of looks like the rain is dissipating. So they're going to play. They're going to play if it's raining. And tonight's a really interesting game, by the way, between the Switchbacks and Las Vegas Lights. So hopefully you see you out there. If not, hopefully I talk to you right here on Extra Sports 1300 starting at 6:30. And if I'm unable to do either of those things, enjoy your weekend, and we'll reconvene on Monday.